The desert air was thick with tension. The black military helicopter sat silent, half buried in dust, its rotors lifeless under the blazing sun. Dozens of technicians rushed around, tools clanging, sweat dripping, radios crackling. But no one could get the bird to fly again. Every minute it stayed down meant soldiers trapped behind enemy lines, waiting, praying. "Sir, we've tried everything." "The system's fried," one engineer said, shaking his head. The general's jaw tightened. He stared at the lifeless machine, then at the horizon. His next words stunned everyone. "Call him," the general said quietly. "Call Sergeant Major Henry Cole." The name made the room fall silent. Some of the younger officers exchanged confused looks. One finally whispered, "Sir, the old mechanic who retired 10 years ago?" The general nodded slowly. "Yeah. The one they called the Ghost of the Skies." And just like that, the forgotten veteran was about to return one last time. The call came in at 2:17 a.m. Henry Cole lived in a tiny cabin on the outskirts of town, far from the noise of the base he once called home. His hands, scarred from decades of work, were busy restoring an old motorcycle when the phone rang. He hesitated before picking it up. "Cole here," he said, his voice rough, tired. "Sergeant Major Cole, this is General Riker." The silence that followed was heavy. Henry hadn't heard that voice in almost a decade. "Riker, it's been a while," Henry said, forcing a smile. "I wouldn't be calling unless it was serious," the general replied. "We've got a Black Hawk down in the southern range. Engine failure, full electrical crash. None of our men can bring it back. But you were the one who built the emergency override for this model before you retired. We need you, Henry." Henry looked at his reflection in the dusty window, the gray hair, the worn hands, the medals on the wall collecting more dust than pride. "I'm not the man I used to be," he said quietly. "Maybe," said Riker, "but that helicopter is holding the lives of my men hostage. And you're the only one who can save them." Henry closed his eyes. The memories came rushing back, the sound of rotors, the smell of burning oil, the screams of soldiers waiting for extraction. He grabbed his old jacket, the one with the faded patch that read Mechanic, Combat Division, U.S. Army Air. "Send a chopper," he said finally. "I'll be ready in 10. When Henry arrived at the crash site, the technicians barely acknowledged him. Some smirked quietly, "This old man's supposed to fix what we can't?" The lead engineer, a young lieutenant named Dawson, walked up with folded arms. "Sir, with respect, this system is completely dead. We've run every diagnostic there is. You're wasting your time." Henry didn't reply. He simply walked around the helicopter, running his hand across the metal as if greeting an old friend. "Not dead," he murmured. "Just scared." The young men exchanged looks. Was he losing it? Henry knelt near the base of the engine, listening, not with his ears, but with instinct. "She's been overheated," he muttered. "You tried to restart her cold, didn't you?" Dawson frowned. "How'd you?" Henry gave a thin smile. "You can hear it in the silence. The metal expands unevenly when it's shocked awake. She's not refusing to start, she's protecting herself." With slow, deliberate movements, Henry opened a side panel the technicians hadn't dared touch. Inside was a small, hand-built relay, his relay. He whispered, "Didn't think you'd still have my handiwork in here, old girl." Then, reaching into his tool bag, he pulled out a tiny copper wire and a wrench so old its grip had his initials scratched into it. "This will either fry the system completely," Dawson warned, or bring her back to life," Henry finished, tightening the final bolt. He looked up at the general, who had been standing silently behind him the whole time. "Permission to wake her, sir?" "Do it," said Riker. Henry flipped the master switch. For a moment, nothing. The desert wind howled through the silence. Then, with a cough, a shudder, and a thunderous roar, the helicopter came alive. Its rotors began to spin, slow at first, then faster, slicing the dust into spirals of victory. The soldiers cheered. Dawson stood frozen, mouth open, as the once-dead machine roared like it had never stopped breathing. Henry smiled faintly. Told you she was just scared. Hours later, after the rescue troops were brought back safely, the general found Henry sitting alone by the hangar, looking at the stars. Riker walked up, placing a hand on his old friend's shoulder. You still have it, Cole. I don't know how you do it. Henry chuckled softly. Machines talk if you listen long enough. But most folks don't have the patience anymore. The general nodded. You didn't just fix a machine today. You reminded us what it means to believe in experience, in intuition, in heart. Henry didn't reply. He simply looked out at the sky where the helicopter disappeared minutes earlier. I spent my whole life building things to fly, he said finally. But I forgot what it felt like to see one take off and know it carried lives, not just metal. Riker smiled. You haven't been forgotten, Henry. You're the reason half our fleet still runs. Today, you saved lives again. As the first rays of dawn painted the desert gold, the general saluted him, an old soldier honoring another. Henry returned the salute, tears glistening in his eyes. When he turned to leave, Dawson, the young engineer, ran after him. Sir! Before you go, could you teach me? The way you listened to that bird, I've never seen anything like it. Henry smiled warmly. That's the secret, kid. You don't fix machines, you earn their trust. He handed the young man his old wrench. She's yours now. Treat every aircraft like a friend who's seen battle, not just a hunk of steel. And with that, Henry Cole, the forgotten veteran, walked into the rising sun, his legacy soaring in the sky above. Lightbulb final message, narrator's voice ending. Sometimes, the most advanced machines don't need a manual, they need a man with a heart that remembers. Experience may fade with age, but wisdom only grows stronger. Because true heroes never retire.